So today I had Dan Brulé on the podcast. He is one of my favorite breathwork teachers over the years. I've worked with him in person multiple times, and I've taken his online classes and some of his certifications online. And when I first started diving into breathwork, I realized it was a pretty deep rabbit hole, and Dan's been around for decades teaching and learning from many different teachers all over the world. And one of the things I really love about him is that he sort of learns from everyone, but doesn't really follow anyone in particular. And he gives people a lot of permission to be free with the breath and to explore. And that's something I really resonated with deeply about him. So when I started exploring breathing, I feel like his book, Just Breathe, and the way he approached it when I was with him in person gave me a lot of freedom to explore the breath without worrying about doing it wrong. So I've really found him to be a cool teacher, and I thought it would be great to have him on the show and expose him to more people. So if you enjoy this episode when it's over, please rate the show and share it. That's one of the best ways to help other people to discover it. So enjoy the episode, and I look forward to having many more guests on the show. All right, Dan Brulé, I really do appreciate you joining me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, you're in the Netherlands right now doing a workshop. I wish I could be there. It sounds amazing. And I discovered you many years ago, and I read your book, Just Breathe, quite a few years ago. I think right when it came out. It was one of my favorite books because it was so practical, and I'd been exploring the breath since probably 2009, but I feel like in the world of breath work, which you know more than anybody, people can get a little bit clingy to certain ways of breathing, and you helped give me permission, almost like the first time when I was playing guitar for years and I saw somebody just ripping and beating on the guitar, to be more free and to yawn and to start just giving myself permission to be more light and more free and to be more explorative. And so you've been one of my favorite teachers over the years.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
I've done my job. It sounds like I like it. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've inspired me. And you probably don't remember this. I met you in Sedona quite a few years ago at a workshop, and probably 2.5, 3 hour workshop. And anyway, I'll just
Sedona, that was many years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember going up there after a 24-hour shift and being exhausted, thinking, man, maybe I shouldn't even go. I had zero hours of sleep. But when I came home from your workshop, I had more energy than any human on the planet. So anyway.
Yeah, well, that's what keeps me going after 75 countries and 50 plus years and 300,000 people. You know, if I'd be burned out if I wasn't breathing.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to expose you to people that maybe haven't heard of you yet, and just maybe give a little overview of some of the people that have inspired you and what got you on this path. I know that's a long story, but some of the bigger moments and bigger teachers and moments in your life.
Yeah. Well, you know, I started this obsession with breath in kindergarten in Catholic school when I remember the priest talking about the book of Genesis and how God took the dust of the earth and formed the body of man and breathed into the nostrils of man the breath of life. And I was just a 5-year-old kid, but there was something, I don't know. I couldn't understand why everybody wasn't excited. Like, God is breathing into us. What? And I can't tell you how many times I got the wind knocked out of me growing up. And I was the kid who was organizing breath holding competitions in the schoolyard. And we were hyperventilating and then squeezing each other until we felt like passing out. It seemed I was playing breath games from when I was a kid. And then the big moment came. I mean, I had a couple of drowning experiences, near drowning experiences. And that fear, that inability to breathe, and then just making it and being able to breathe, it just made breathing so important to me, you know, that when you don't know what you got till it's gone.
Yeah.
And so when you're so thankful that you can breathe again, that kind of sticks. It gave me an appreciation. And then my first job was an X-ray technician. I was literally taking X-rays of people's lungs. And every time I take an X-ray, a chest X-ray, I tell them, taking a deep breath, hold it, and then click, I take their picture. And I had to watch them closely because if they were breathing, when you took the x-ray, it would be blurry. So I had to make sure that they were, and you want them to take a big breath so you can visualize all the lung spaces. And so I was training myself to just observe very carefully people's breathing. And I started realizing everybody was doing something different. The muscles they used to accomplish a full breath, what they went through to do it, what they felt was a full breath. And it's as if the breath started speaking to me. And I realized that everyone's breathing pattern is expressing and reflecting their state of being. Their relationship to their body, their relationship to life is reflected in their relationship to the breath. And then I learned CPR. I was only 19 years old, 1969, 1970, when I was in X-ray school and I took a CPR course. And within a week, 2 weeks of taking this course, I resuscitated somebody. And, to come upon somebody who's clinically dead with their pupils are fixed and dilated and there's no pulse and no breathing, and you blow into them and they blink and wake up, it's like freaking miracle. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that every day of their life? I was high for a week after that experience. And, oh man, and then when I went into the military, I was a medical person, and I ended up in deep sea diving and special operations. And I was training in breath holding. I was mixing gases for diving. I was working in a recompression chamber. I was doing underwater rescue. I was doing big wave rescue. And so I was forced to develop good breath control. And I also, taking my observation of breathing, I was often, because of my combination, I was a medical person with demolition training. And so it was and so I ended up on teams and on jobs that were quite unique and different. And several times I was assigned to a team and I hadn't worked with them. I hadn't trained with them. And I didn't know, excuse my expression, when the shit hit the fan, how are these guys going to show up? And so I would stress test them using breathing. Or just whatever we could do to push them to their limit to see which way they fell apart when you push them. And I was able to, in my own simple-minded way, divide them into two groups. I had the breath holders and the hyperventilators. And so when people got stressed, they either overbreathed or they underbreathed. And that, to me, revealed how they would behave and react when they were really pushed. The breath holders would freeze. The hyperventilators would run around like chickens with their head cut off. And so then I knew how to keep them. I could watch ahead of time and coach them. Some people had to say, look, calm down, like take a couple of breaths. And other people, they had to kick them in the butt and, say, come on, breathe. And so I was identifying everybody. I was understanding everybody in terms of their relationship to their breath. And that's never stopped. I'm like a student of the breath. I'm observing breathing patterns, breathing behaviors, changes in people's breathing, which reveals a change in their state, emotional state, psychological state, physiological, chemical state. And that continues to today. I'm a student of the breath. And the big leaps came when I got introduced to the East, pranayama, and I started to meet yoga masters. I went to China and met Qigong master, and now here's cultures that had turned breathing into a science, and they had studied the breath. People passionate about studying the breath, and so if I ever heard of anyone who knew anything about breathing, I was breathing down their neck or kissing their feet until I could get from them whatever I could get. And back in my X-ray day, before the military, I met this orthopedic surgeon in 1969. Right around that time, they started doing hip nailings, putting pins in old people's hips. They fall, break their hip. And it was a new kind of surgery. And there was a surgeon who was working for the company that manufactured these pins, and he was traveling around the country training other surgeons. And so when he came to my hospital, I kept getting called up to the surgery room to take an x-ray to see the position of the pin, the placement of the pin. And so I got to hang around with this guy. And he was in the 1%. This guy was like in the 1%ers, you know, and he was elegant, he was charismatic. And when he walked in the room, you know, he just had a presence, and he breathed. I could see he breathed different than the average person. His breathing pattern was smooth. It was elegant. And he was consciously using his breath. He was aware of his breath. And in critical moments, he would turn to his breath as to do something special. It was like he was using his breath, you know? Mm. And so I started wondering, I wonder, this guy's the best at what he does. I wonder if anyone in the 1%, the best musicians, engineers, entertainers, you know, whatever, financial people, if they're in the 1%, do they breathe better than the average person? Are they more aware of their breathing than the average person? Do they turn to their breathing when the average person would not? Have they practiced breathing, whereas the average person would not? And I never found any exceptions. Never, not one single. And I've met presidents, I've met kings, I'm Olympic champions, billionaire hedge fund managers, celebrities, Tony Robbins, and there's no exception to that. I thought I found one. His name was Rizvi. He's a huge multi-billionaire hedge fund guy. I was invited when my book was published to a private party where he hired the Gypsy All-Stars. I mean, I never been to a party where somebody spends $1 million on a party, you know, like a birthday party. It was just fantastic. And I was giving out copies of my book, and I cornered him. And, you know, I'm asking him, hey, you practice any breathing? He said, nah, I don't practice any breathing. Really? You observe your breathing? No, I never think about it. I'm going, wow, you'd be like the first exception. He goes, oh, well, wait a minute. He says, at night, if I can't sleep because I got some problem going around, an unresolved issue, and it's keeping me awake, I take a long inhale. I hold my breath for a couple of minutes, and then I give myself a long exhale. I said, that's it. That's breath work. The average person wouldn't think of that. He goes, oh, wait, there's something else. He says, my wife and I noticed that if one of us yawns, the other one just yawns. And so we actually play a yawning game where we yawn together. I said, that's breath work. Phew, I thought you were an exception, but turns out he wasn't. So Indian yogis, Chinese martial artists, and there are some, big names in the breathing world, Leonard Orr, Swami Rama, Stanislav Grof, Nancy Z. So all of the big names in breathing 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was my business to dig them up, find them, see what they did, how they did it, what they knew, and what they had to give. And that continues today. And children are good teachers to watch,
It's amazing. Yeah, you've lived quite a life, and I really appreciate how curious you are and how open and like non-dogmatic. That's my favorite thing about curiosity, is that if you stay open and you find teachers, but you don't have to cling to each teacher, you just take little bits from each one. You're like the Bruce Lee or the mixed martial artist. Mm-hmm. And when you started going down that path deeper and deeper, and you're going to China, you're going to India, you're meeting these people that have really mastered the breath to some degree, you were doing a self-practice. Which ones were the ones that were most profound that made you realize, I need to bring this to the world? These are the things that people need. Or was there certain ones that hit hard?
Well, in the military, breath control for me was about arousal control. It was about mental state management. It was about emotional state management. If you get control of your breath, you get control of your energy. And so it was the first thing I turned to keep myself in a state, and my heart rate starting to go through the roof, start slowing my breathing down to get a handle on my heart rate. And so it seemed quite natural to use my breath to manage my energy. And so that became kind of a thing, and breath holding. I mean, the longer I could hold my breath, the longer I could stay underwater and drag somebody out or do whatever needed to be done, or a smoke-filled building, falling, going around in the dark, feeling my way to try to pull somebody out. And if I could hold my breath for just another 10, 30 seconds, that's more of an odds that I can drag somebody out or get something done underwater. And so it just made sense that I should be practicing and getting better and better at holding my breath and controlling my breath. And then when the whole Eastern thing kind of dawned on me, and I started studying with Eastern teachers and started to discover the ecstatic nature of the breath and breathing energy and not just air, and linking the breathing to controlling and managing prana, chi, ki, life force energy, and using it to awaken natural healing energy. Now I'm like a pioneer. I'm just somebody, feeling around in a territory that nobody has written about or talked about. And that, to me, I love that. I love, discovering and experimenting with things. And so, God, I've had so many experiences that just kept make me recommit to this path. Somebody demonstrating an extraordinary healing, self-healing, or shifting behaviors, dropping addictions. I've seen people manage so many things by first managing their breath, becoming aware of their breath. Like the more aware we are of our breathing, the more aware we become, period. The more conscious we are of every breath, the more conscious we are of our thoughts, our reactions, our emotions, our posture, the effect that our words have. And so for me, it was, we can practice certain breathing things that carry over into life. If nothing can disturb my breathing, nothing can disturb me. And as long as anything has the power to distract me from my breath, if that's what I want to focus on, or disturb my breath when I need it to be flowing, then I'm a victim of my own dysfunction or lack of skill. And so to me, it just makes sense that by mastering my breath, I can master my body, my emotions, my mind. And mastering my mind and body is really important. And I don't know how to do that without mastering the breath. You can't master the breath without mastering your body, your mind, and your emotions. And you really can't master your body, your mind, and emotions without mastering your breath. And that's why my path, I call breath mastery, because to me, it leads to the mastery of everything else.
That's amazing. Yeah, in my field for 20 years, breathwork has been the #1 tool for nervous system management, high stress situations, trying to go to sleep after a high stress call, your days off. I've found people like you, really good teachers, Stan Groff, that help me to clear and sweep the whole nervous system and let go and process trauma. I mean, it's just become my best friend. And that's how you've been. And you really, truly are an inspirational person when it comes to this field, just because of your natural inspiration. You're sort of fueled by it. Like when we got on the line here, I'm like, dude, I'm sorry to keep you up. It's 8 o'clock there, and you've been teaching for this whole week, but you told me this gives me energy. It doesn't take from me, and so it's an obvious thing with you. When was the first time that you started actually truly sharing it with people? Was it organic, and you're just telling people naturally, like a missionary, and then it evolved, or did you start to just build workshops and classes? I'm curious how that looked in the beginning.
Well, I started teaching CPR because I was a missionary for it. And so it was kind of a very structured way of using your breath. First you have to take care of yourself. If you're really going to do a good job with somebody else, you need to make sure you're breathing for yourself. And then I had a really cool awakening. It was a gift to me when I was in deep sea diving school, special operations training. They were eliminating people, and I started to fall back. We were running much more that day than any other day. It was a deliberate day when they were going to weed out a good chunk of the candidates. And I knew it was going to be a serious day because all the trainers showed up. Usually you had 1 or 2 trainers working with the group each day for PT, physical, running and butterflies and jumping jacks and all that crap. But this day, all the trainers showed up and go, this is weird. And that was the day they had this false peak experience where, we were running 5 miles every day. And then they came in that day, and the first thing they said is, today we're running 10 miles. And they're looking at everybody. And if you go, oh, you're going to have a bad day, they notice that because they want you to go, what? Only 10? Let's do 20. That's what they're looking for. And then you just start this thing. Okay, 5 miles. Yeah, we've been running 5 miles. The last mile is tough, but you always get through it. And so then you get 5 miles and you suddenly realize, holy crap, I'm only halfway there. That thought will destroy you. Like it just deflates you. So I realized it's about mental mindset management, and so putting a certain power into the breath was a way for me to reinforce a positive mindset. Like, I'm going to do this. And I was sort of using my breath to express the determination. And then we start 6 miles, 7 miles, and people are starting to trail off, and they're already getting kicked out. They're being eliminated. Okay, you can't handle a surprise, unnecessary. Be able to go further than you think. Then we don't want you. We don't need you. We can't have you. And so now it's all about psyching yourself and going for it. But I was starting to experience like muscle weakness, and my legs were holding me up, and I couldn't keep up my breathing. I couldn't keep up the energy, and I started falling back. And there was a guy, Ed Kane, God bless this guy. He deliberately slowed down. He saw me starting to kind of lose it, and he deliberately slowed down, and he got on the side of me and he said, Doc, let's breathe together. And just his presence and that love, it was love, like energetic support, and we started breathing in rhythm to our footsteps, inhaling 2, exhaling 2, inhaling 2. And I don't know, his presence, my focus on the breathing, the shift in what I was telling myself and what I was thinking, maybe all that together. And suddenly energy came out of nowhere. And I had a real experience that, there's an expression in the Navy SEAL world that when you think you have no more energy left, you still have 40% juice left in your battery. You just haven't learned that it's there and that you can access it. You think you're depleted, but you still got 40%. And I discovered that. And suddenly it was like I broke through that wall. The runners hit a wall, and then after that, you could just like run forever. And I was passing guys, and I ended up right on the heels of the lead trainer. And I was, just for fun, I was trying to step on his heels just to let him know that I was right there. And if he slowed down a little bit, I was going to run him over. And he's my leader. He's like the guy. And so something happened after that. I just realized that whenever I feel like I can't make it, or I'm too tired, or I'm uninspired, or I'm not motivated, or I know that's just bullshit. Don't buy into it. That just ain't fucking true. And that certainty allows us to access some extra inspiration, some extra energy. And energy comes out of nowhere. I mean, you mentioned that, I'm teaching all the time. There have been times when I get up and, oh my God, I need to sleep for another 8 hours. I have to go and teach right now. And I don't know what I'm going to teach these people. Man, I should be in bed. But then as soon as I'm there and it's time, energy just comes. It just comes magically. And I don't have any doubt about that anymore. So it doesn't matter how sick or tired or unmotivated or uninspired I am. I have utter certainty that when it's time and I need to show up, somehow it always happens. And I rely on that. And I don't let any other negativity or limitations trick me, because I've had too many times I've realized that ain't true. I just think that, I just feel that, but that's not how it is. and it keeps getting proven to me. So,
Mm.
and if you're not getting energy from what you do, then you're probably not doing it well, because when I'm working, it's not me doing it. Like, something comes through. You're part of something bigger that's happening, and all the responsibility isn't on you. That would weigh you down and burn you out. And it's just a trust of some kind that I'm just a piece of the puzzle. I'm doing my piece and my part. I'm not responsible for the whole world. I'm just responsible for my part. And if I show up with my part, everybody else seems to show up with their part. And we all together, we is smarter than me kind of thing just manifests.
Mm.
And I don't have any doubt about that. It sounds a little woo-woo, you know, people would say, well, what would you do if blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah happened? And I could honestly say, geez, I have no idea what I would do. What if 8 guys came around you and they all had baseball bats? And I don't know. But what I do know is that if that ever happened, in that moment, I would know what to do. And I don't need to know ahead of time. I think we waste a lot of energy trying to know things before we need to know them. And I don't know what I would do in any particular situation, but what I do know is if that situation occurred in that moment, then I would know. And I have certainty about that. And I don't need to know 1 minute before I actually need to know. We waste a lot of energy trying to know things before we need to know them. And a lot of my work was chaos. No matter what plan you had, you could bet that the plan, as soon as it meets reality, it doesn't work. And we didn't know what was waiting for us. So what can you plan? How can you plan when you don't even know what it is that you're stepping into? So you have to have resilience. You have to be able to, in the moment, respond and innovate. And so you develop resilience and resourcefulness. And you develop a certainty that somehow you'll figure it out. Somehow you'll do it. And you can't prove it, and there's no evidence ahead of time, but too many times out of nowhere, solutions just occurred in the moment. You're coming from a flow and not from struggle. As soon as you're coming from struggle, well, now you could flip a coin, or you could almost predict you're not going to make it. But when you're in the flow, decisions are so easily made, and you're catching little subtle cues, and you're already responding to them. And it's not even a conscious thing in some level, Mm-hmm. It's why I never plan a talk or a presentation. I just wait on there and I just make shit up, and I trust it. What's going to come out of me, I'm picking up from other people what they need to hear. And I've taught this long enough. I don't need to prepare. And so it's easier than it seems. Like we get a lot done, and it's really hard. And on one level, if you look at it, you go, yeah, well, it is. I mean, I've been in 15 countries so far in the last 12 months, and I've had my hands on several thousand people. It seems like a lot of work, but when it's actually happening, it's not work. It's something else.
I love that. Yeah, it's amazing how that works. You seem to be in flow in your life. Like cultivating flow in life is such an orientation. And it seems to me that the breath, which you've spoken to and written about and taught in your workshops and do, is the thing that teaches it in and of itself, because it can just, when you bring awareness to it, it's happening. It's like you're being breathed, and then you can change it and use a little bit of control, just a subtle bit of discipline. And then it's a lot about letting go, and a bit like life can be this way. And so what you're doing is you're showing through embodiment that when you're present and you're lucid and you're connected to the breath, your nervous system is managed enough to then orient towards knowing exactly what to do. You can then surrender and not be using the frontal mind and the thinking mind. And yeah, I feel like a lot of activities bring this on flow. And all of the great downhill mountain bikers and rock climbers and surfers, they're all so connected to their breath. And it seems like all the top performers, I know you taught like Tony Robbins, his breathing techniques, and you look at Wim Hof, all these guys. It's such a cool thing that the breath is the foundation for what you're talking to here. And I would love to ask you a little bit about Leonard Orr, because you spent a lot of time with him and he was a big, I guess, teacher of yours. And it seemed to me that when I was going through your experiential workshop, that circular breathing, the way that you shared it was so beautiful. And I'd been to Stan Groff's workshops and it was different but similar. But I loved the way that you taught the Leonard Orr rebirthing approach. Can you share a little bit about him and what you learned from him and how you integrated that into some of your workshops?
Yeah, he's one of my favorite teachers. I studied and traveled and taught with him for over 40 years. He's just a dear friend, a real inspiration. He talked about things nobody else talked about, and is a very unique person. And Stan Groff actually did a rebirthing session with Leonard Orr. He didn't care for Leonard Orr's philosophy or his personality, but Leonard Orr turned him on to the power of the breath and inspired him to switch from LSD to shamanic type breathing practices. Yeah, Leonard was the most emotionally clear person that I'd ever met. Whenever he communicated, there was no emotional baggage. And that's, when everybody, me too, when I'm communicating, I got emotion behind my words and stuff. And he was able to communicate in such a clear way because it was, and you could hear him, like when I try to communicate, if I'm angry, people they get my anger and they can't hear what I'm saying, and so he had that, and it was beautiful. There was a really beautiful thing about him, and he understood the subtle nature of the breath, like his understanding of the breath. I loved how he voiced it. He said it's the real skill, the real art is the merging of the outer breath, which is air, with the inner breath, which is spirit. That's the art of rebirthing. And so it's about learning to breathe energy and not just air. Anybody can huff and puff and move a lot of air, but what about the breath within the breath? Like in the Jewish tradition, that ruach, neshemet, the breath within the breath, the prana, the chi, the ki, the life force. That's what we need to learn to breathe. And when we do that, that's life force energy. That's healing energy. That's creative energy. And now we're not just huffing and puffing, but we're managing life force energy, which is creative and it's healing. So that's an art. And he taught me really to incorporate relaxation. And so a relaxed body and a quiet mind. And without that, you can't hack into the energy of the breath. Like, I'm always attracting spiritual people and wherever I go, and spiritual people are always talking about energy, oh, I love the energy of this place, or, oh, I don't like that person's energy, and so I'll meet people that go, oh, I'm very sensitive to energy. I'm very sensitive to energy. And my feeling is, oh my God, you're not sensitive at all. You are hyper reactive, and you're confusing that with sensitivity. Hyper reactivity is just because you react to every little thing, that doesn't mean you're sensitive. In fact, you cannot be sensitive, truly sensitive, until your body is very, very relaxed and your mind is very, very quiet. Then you can actually sense the energy. You can connect to the energy in the breath. And he also brought, we went canoeing one time, me and Leonard Orr, we went canoeing. And after we got on this little canoe ride, afterwards we joked that it was like each of us were trying to steer the canoe in a different direction all the time, like we never quite were working together. I was fighting him. Well, why isn't he he was in the back, you keep the paddle and that'll turn the thing. And so I had to paddle a little extra to turn, and he was reacting. And the whole thing was hilarious, and so out of that, I developed this metaphor of understanding about true sensitivity. And that's intuition arises. When you're truly sensitive, you're very intuitive, as one example. And only after that canoe ride did Leonard and I we exposed our lack of synchronicity to each other, and we both started focusing on really connecting more intuitively to each other. And over the years, I sensed it. I would call him up when he was working on something or thinking about something, and he'd go, Dan, wow, I was just like thinking about that. And vice versa. He would connect me when I was going through some struggle. And one time he called me up, he says, hey, what's happening with your money case? I went, holy shit, how did you know? I just got this huge freaking bill. I don't have enough money in the bank. I don't know what I'm going to do to feed my kids. And he just picked it up out there from a few thousand miles away. So we developed this really beautiful connection. And so I have a rap about genuine sensitivity. And I use the notion of a boat when it moves through water. So when a boat moves through water, it makes waves. Now, if you're floating in your little other boat and you feel those waves, you don't say, I feel the boat. You feel the waves that the boat makes. You don't feel the boat. And so when energy moves through the body, it makes waves in the form of feelings and sensations and reactions, emotions. When energy moves through the mind, it makes waves, images, memories, thoughts, visions. That's not the energy. You're feeling the waves that the energy makes when it moves through your body or your mind. And thus, quieting the mind and relaxing the body, now you're not experiencing the waves that the energy makes. You start to actually connect directly with that energy. And that's an art. And for me, that requires Buddhist principles: non-judgment, non-resistance, non-attachment. And for me, the shortcut is non-reaction, because judging is a reaction of the mind. I like it, I don't like it, I should, I shouldn't, it's good, it's bad. That's a reaction of the mind. And depending on how the mind has been programmed or conditioned, something's going to be good, something's going to be bad, some things you're going to like, some things you shouldn't, you shouldn't, you want, you do. And the body automatically reacts. And so non-reaction for me became the shortcut in my own practice with breathing and in my coaching with other people. Practice non-reaction. Contracting is a reaction. Catch those little contractions and release them before they grip you and really stop you. And notice your reactions. You get triggered and off you go. You got to interrupt those reactions. So practicing non-reaction, which is non-judgment, non-resistance, non-attachment, allows you to get into a flow. And when you're under intense pressure, you don't have time to think. It's your training that kicks in. When I'm driving a car, it's like unconscious until something unexpected, a sudden turn, somebody stops, somebody comes. Then suddenly driving becomes conscious. Up until then, you're in the flow. You can talk on the phone, you can eat a sandwich, you can and you're driving the car. You're unconscious because you've trained in driving. Your feet know where to go, your hands know where to go. And so the same thing with breathing. If we train in certain breathing responses, they help us to interrupt dysfunctional reactions. So
that's amazing. Yeah, it makes me curious about, you've seen this and spoken about this often, and I've seen it. Say a Buteyko method person, that's their thing. Patrick McKeown, those guys, I went through Oxygen Advantage and loved it and learned so much from it. And that's become a lot of my, I want to integrate this more in my life. But then I've also met the people that get so stuck on that they're terrified to yawn or terrified to take a big breath, or it's almost like you do this with fads or diets, or you get into something like, say, yoga, and it becomes this obsession to the point where it becomes almost harmful, in my opinion. And with you, one thing I always appreciate, I've brought this up already, is the freedom and the curiosity and the surrender a little bit and the playfulness of it. So maybe you could talk a little bit about this subject here of the clinging, which you've just started to get onto, and a little bit about yawning and why yawning is so cool and important. Because I remember feeling really weird about yawning before I came across your work and thinking, oh, they're going to think I'm not interested, or I'm making them think I'm tired, blah, blah, blah. And now I yawn on purpose, and I think of it as this healing thing. So maybe we can touch about some of that.
Yeah, I mean, Buteyko, I love the man. I spent time with him back in 1990, 91, 92. In the early 90s, I was going back and forth to Russia, and I met him. I hung out with him. I love the man. I mean, his method is for asthma is the best in the world, no doubt about it. Patrick McEwen started out as a Buteyko person, and I love Patrick. I knew him before he wrote his first book, the second book, the Breathing Cure, Oxygen Advantage. And recently, actually, he's like come around to little short periods of exploring connected breathing. And so there's a spectrum in breath work, and on one end you have the Buteyko, Patrick McEwen, like the Peter Litchfield, carbon dioxide chemistry end of breathing, which is it's unarguable. It's legitimate. There's no doubt about it. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the transformational, cathartic, spiritual. Well, you've got to get comfortable with the whole spectrum. You can't camp out in one place because at some point you're missing. You got to half the picture. You don't have the whole picture, and so that's deliberately why I like embracing the opposites and the extremes. I find tremendous value in both, and sometimes you want to be free to lean here or lean there, and that getting comfortable with the whole spectrum and not being rigid. You can't laugh through your nose. You can't cry through your nose. So you better be able to breathe through your mouth. And you better be, when you speak, you're breathing through your mouth. And so get comfortable with it, buddy, because there's no other way. And so the yawning thing actually came. Yawning is, we all know that yawning is contagious, for example. One person yawns, somebody else yawns. And the closer you are to a person, the more you're connected to them, the more yawning is contagious. It's even contagious between you and your pets. Like there's a co-regulation of nervous systems that's occurring, and we're synchronized at certain moments. And yawning is part of that phenomenon. So, for example, yawning is controlled by that part of the brain called the precuneus, and that's the same part of the brain that's responsible for empathy. And that's why psychopaths, sociopaths, do not share the tendency to yawn when other people yawn. They lack empathy. And so usually if I'm doing a group of seminars, this is when I would say, who's not yawning right now? And so that connection, that energetic connection, and anybody who hasn't played with yawning hasn't discovered how cool it is to play with it, and how you don't, just meditate on your feelings and sensations in your body, meditate on your energy, on your state, and then just start yawning. Make yourself yawn. And yawn again, and yawn again, and yawn until your eyes water. That's really important. And if you yawn to that extent, stop and think about what just happened. You're detoxing. You've stimulated your endocrine system, your immune system. You're hacked into your biology. You've produced fluids, for God's sakes, and all you did was yawn. And then if you just keep yawning, and then just do it for 2 or 3 minutes of continuous yawning. Fake a yawn till a real yawn comes. Make yourself yawn. And then after a minute or two of constant yawning, just check in. You're going to feel lighter. You're going to feel cooler. You're going to have some buzzing. There's going to be energy streaming. There's going to be you cannot not notice a change in your state. And that should motivate you. If simple yawning does that, imagine what some other disciplined breathing practices could do, and that motivates you to, hey, let me play with this some more. Because neuroscientists can't find any other single function that lights up more parts of the brain and has more beneficial, results than a simple yawn. And seashells yawn, reptiles yawn. Why would nature make everybody and everything yawn? It must be pretty damn important. And so my philosophy is, if it's so important, why wait till your body makes you do it? Why not do it because it feels good? Why not do it before you're forced to do it? And that's what most people do. They only yawn when their body makes them yawn. And then they don't even really let themselves have a full yawn. They'll do this, and they actually stifle the yawn. Yeah. And, like, block it. Like, come on. Something's trying to happen. Let your nature express. Let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. And if you're stifling a yawn, you're stifling your spirit. You're literally stifling your nature. And if you do it with a yawn, you better wake up and see where else you're doing that in your life. Where else are you stifling your nature and stifling your spirit? Yeah. You don't do that with food, for example. You don't only eat when you're starving. You eat 3 times a day because you know it's good for you. You don't do that, for a bowel movement. You don't wait until you just can't quite hold it in, and then you have regular bowel movements. So why aren't you yawning regularly? Just because it's good for you and it feels good. And you can't help but notice that it has some energetic effect. Now, for those people who aren't sensitive to energy, maybe they don't notice any difference. But boy, I think you'd have to be dead inside not to be able to feel how you feel, yawn on purpose for a couple of minutes, and then honestly sense what's happened to your energy. It's always positive. It's always healthy. And so let's make yawning great again.
I love it. That's been my favorite part of learning from you over the years too, is the disarming component to playfulness and exploration and curiosity as the root, because I think of a lot of people come and they're hung up on trying something new and they're worried about doing it wrong. And that seems to be more of the bigger hang up with the breath or with anything new. And so one thing I did pick up on from you was just the freedom to be playful and to let go. And so when I have people even come to my little workshops, that's the number one thing I want, is to disarm them and give them permission to just be free. And like, freedom comes from within, and it does come from your breathing, because so much of the time I think most people are holding, and like you said, some people are over breathing or whatnot, but it's more of the unconsciousness. And one of the big pieces I'll always remember that you helped me to see is that it's a relationship, and that we're building awareness first. And just without judgment, you can flip it to curiosity and start to give yourself permission to be free and to be curious. And that's what's led you down this path of exploration without getting stuck in one rigid lane. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear more about, like, when you met someone like a Swami Rama, or these people, these gurus, or these, you even spent some time at Oso's place, I've heard, and helped build the center up there, or the breathing component to it. Can you talk about some of the Indian mystics and the rigidity of some of their practices, and if they were playful or not, and what you learned from people like Swami Rama?
Yeah, this notion that there's a right way to breathe and a wrong way to breathe. Wow, that sure gets in the way of creativity. I mean, anybody who's involved in any creativity stuff. I was involved with a creative advertising and production company for a couple of years. And that creative process where everything is allowed, the stupid ideas, the crazy, in the beginning, you don't want to interrupt that flow of, you don't judge the ideas that come out. That creativity is stifled by this idea of, is it right? Is it wrong? And to get past that, and you apply that to breath, oh my God. See, consciousness and energy are the two most precious things that we have. They are what make us as humans, our consciousness and our energy. And when you breathe, that's exactly what you're playing with, your consciousness and your energy. And no one should or can tell you what kind of relationship you need to have with your own energy and your own consciousness. That's just you. And so, right, wrong, good, bad, there's a place for that in the world, courts of law, and, but not inner work, not human qualities, so we have to get out of that. And that's what from the great spiritual teachers that I met, they were rebels in some way. They went against the grain in some way. They didn't buy into the status quo. They were outside of the box in a way. Standard religious people are like, for me, like politicians. They're way in the box, and I don't think anyone great has ever accomplished anything without passion, without enthusiasm, without questioning the answers, without looking at things in a different way than everybody else looked at them. I mean, that's the definition of creativity, is to, don't look at it like everybody else does. And so that's especially important when you're dealing with the most precious aspects of yourself, your energy and your consciousness. And so the most spiritual people I have ever met have been the most conscious. And the most conscious people I've ever met have been the most spiritual. So for me, spirituality and consciousness, we're talking about the same thing. And creativity, the most creative people I've ever met have been the most conscious. They see things other people don't see. They feel things other people don't feel. That's why they're so creative. And so creativity, spirituality, consciousness, what if it's all the same thing? And how conscious are you is how spiritual you are. And so the synopsis of my book is, Just Breathe, is that all those high states and those extraordinary abilities that we normally associate with the great saints and the warriors and the mystics and the gurus, and those same high states and extraordinary abilities are accessible to everyone with a belly button. We just have never made it important enough to actually pursue it. We were following you should grow up to be a doctor, you should grow up to be a lawyer, you should do this, and people are just, okay, and off they go. And children are not stupid. If a child has to decide between following the voice of their spirit or listening to the voice of their parents, any intelligent child knows, I need this person for love, for food, for shelter. And this voice I have gets me in trouble. When I follow my own spirit, it keeps getting me into trouble. It's bumping me in. And I have to choose between the approval of my parents or the authority figures in my life, because I need them for survival. I need them for approval. And so I will sacrifice my connection to my own spirit out of a kind of raw intelligence. And then once you're strong enough and you don't need those other people, then you can turn back to your spirit. But by then, you forgot it. You don't even know you don't know what you really love anymore. And you don't even know what you're really good at, because you've been getting good at other things that somebody said you need to get good at. And and I think something in common with the great teachers I met is they didn't doubt their own goodness. There's a lot of talk about trauma these days and different methods that are trauma-informed this and evidence-based things about trauma. I think the deepest, greatest trauma is causing a child to doubt their own goodness. And I think very few children escape that. You're a bad boy. You're a bad girl. You did that wrong. You did that wrong. And you can't hold on to a sense of natural goodness because it's not allowed. You're not free to even express it, because most children, when you try to express something spontaneous and natural, it never quite comes out the right way the first time. And you're guilted and shamed and compared to somebody else, and you feel lesser and lesser and lesser until pretty soon you doubt your inherent goodness. You doubt your natural greatness. And then you settle for okay, good enough, conformity. It's safer. And so the great spiritual teachers I met, somehow they weren't swayed by that. They were immune to it. They went ahead in spite of the fact that they weren't getting the kind of support. If you want to follow the crowd, you'll get a lot of support. Walking your own path in this world, if you're going to walk someone else's path, you'll get a lot of support. I mean, how can 1 million Buddhists be wrong? How can 500 million Christians be wrong? Who am I? And so every one of these great saints and masters in some way, teachers, seem to have broken out of some sort of mass hypnosis of some kind. But they're also, one of my teachers, Swami Rama, mentioned him. He came to the United States, I don't know, the late 60s, early 70s, and he proceeded to hold his breath for 17 minutes and went into a trance. And Dr. Ballantyne, Dr. Hines became his immediate devotees, because these two medically trained people are going, what? This should be impossible. This guy's superhuman. And so he impressed the heck out of them. And they set up this Himalayan Institute in Holmesdale, Pennsylvania, where he lived. And they were did a lot of the early biofeedback practice and research. So I liked going down there to Holmesdale because I could hook me up to the biofeedback stuff. I could practice meditation, visualization. I could practice breathing, and in real time, raise my heart, speed up my heart, slow my heart down, change my body temperature, raise my blood pressure, lower my blood. And I started to be able to hack my way because of that. And it was very rudimentary in those days, the biofeedback stuff. Now the technology is amazing. So what it used to take the yogis decades or lifetimes to master, with the wearable technologies and the biomonitors and stuff we have now, oh wow, you can get in a few weeks and a few months, where it took the yogis years and years of trial and error, real-time feedback. You can tweak some really cool stuff. But Swami Rama was they broke out of the crowd, but then they're very religious about, I guess I'm speaking because I'm not like that. Swami Rama is a good example of someone who was very loyal to a tradition, pranayama. And his mission, his purpose in life was to transmit a certain practice, not add anything to it, not taking anything away from it. His job was to be a pure transmission of the teachings he received and pass them on, and he's loyal to that tradition. I'm a disruptor. I love picking things apart and creating my own Frankenstein kind of approach, and so we were very different. So in that way, he was very Catholic, very rigid, very dogmatic, because he was defending and transmitting a certain tradition, and it was a responsibility for him. And I'm completely different than that. I'm irreverent. I'm unorthodox. I deliberately make waves and shake the boat and question everything. And so very different. But one morning I had this amazing experience. That when you're in between sleeping and waking, there's kind of a creative period there. And that's where you are. And with just one little intention, you can go back to sleep, or you lean the other way and you start getting up. And there's a real choice there and when I'm in that place, I get lots of good ideas very often. It's a kind of a creative little space for me. And that morning I was in Holmesdale. I was down there with Swami Rama. I loved hanging around with him because a lot of these teachers, you just absorb something from them. They don't have to say anything. They don't have to do anything. You catch something from them. And I rely on that way of learning, And so I just like hanging around. I like being in his field. And when we had conversations, even better, reading his books, and I loved it, and so on, and being guided by him in a practice, beautiful. But there was also just something about the presence of these people. It's a felt presence that you can catch and absorb. So that morning, I had this amazing insight about learning to breathe from the breath itself. And it came so clear because he was my breathing teacher, and I was starting to think about where was I going to go. There was a couple of other teachers I wanted to study with, and And anyway, in this morning period, it came so clear to me that I can learn to breathe from the breath itself. I don't need to go out looking for teachers. The breath can be my teacher. And so, and it felt like I had solved a Zen koan. You know, what's the sound of one hand clapping? I was exhilarated, and I got a download, this amazing insight that, and it changed my life. That's become like gospel to me, that's a real fact. The breath is intelligent, and we can learn to breathe from the breath itself. So I couldn't wait to share that with him that morning. And I was just like, I couldn't. And he was playing tennis, and Swami Rama, he was a big guy, and he was a hell of a tennis player. He could have been a tennis pro if he didn't want to be a yogi. He could have been a world champion tennis player. He really was good. So I'm waiting while he's playing tennis, and then afterwards he comes and he wiping a towel, he's sweating, and we're walking, and I couldn't wait I didn't know where to start. So he said, as we were walking, I wanted to say, and just as I was about to start telling him, there was a little girl on the side of the path. We were on it, walking towards the cafeteria. And just as I was about to start talking to him, he turned his head and he went over to this little girl and kind of, I almost got it out. And then he got down on one knee in front of this little girl and he goes, "Who loves you?" And I saw this look, like kind of confusion on the child's face, like a trick question or something. And I saw this little moment and she goes, "Mommy?" No. Who loves you? Daddy? No, come on. Who loves you? Swamiji? Yes, Swamiji loves you. And I thought, ick. Why did he have to pull that out of that kid? What the hell was that about? And so when he walked back at me, I had already like something, I had lost something in my connection to him. But I was in such a high state. And when he walked back, he said, "I see you have something on your mind." And in that moment, what was on my mind was, what the hell was that about? Why did he have to pull that out of that kid? But it passed because that's my judgment. I'm just projecting, blah, 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 whatever. And really, I was excited about this insight. So I told him, I said, "Yeah, Swami, this morning, I got such a clear insight that I can learn to breathe from the breath itself." And he looked at me like I was the stupidest person he'd ever met. And he goes, "Can you learn to get to the moon from the moon itself?" And I went, no. Like, he just like flattened and collapsed me. And then when we started heading to the cafeteria, I veered off to my room. I packed my stuff and I left. I've never seen him again. I love him. I learned everything I could learn from him, but I realized, I'm done with this guy. Time to move on to another teacher. Mm-hmm. And I think every great teacher has done that. They outgrew some teacher in some way. And I think that's something they all have in common. They learned from people. They were standing on the shoulders of others, but they had a unique something. And that's why they stood out from everyone else. And so, and I find that that's been a common denominator. Stan Groff had to put up with a lot of crap from mainstream psychiatrists. He still does, everybody, you don't get the recognition from within that circle because you've broken out of it and you've found something bigger, better, different. And you have to be able to be comfortable with that, Yeah. And they all were. They were very comfortable with being who they are and outside the box and trusting their own whatever, in spite of how many million people said they were wrong. They were willing or able to trust their own inner teacher, their inner healer, their own direct connection to higher intelligence, and they didn't require a middleman. They used middlemen because, hey, they're very helpful. You can catch things, coaches and guides, but you've got to have some direct, your own personal connection, and that's what makes them stand apart every great teacher I've met seemed to have that quality.
I love that. It's a good story and it's powerful. And I always like to remind myself and others to do the same thing. Question authority. Don't just become comfortable with one teacher, find many. And the only way in this culture, especially this day and age, with the technological advancements we've created and the attention economy, there's an element to it that strips young people, especially who didn't have a relationship with, say, nature or their breath or just life itself without this distractible screen blasting their attention and clicking into the dopamine hit. So I feel like now more than ever, sharing with young people their connection to the breath and disconnecting them from these screens will be more important than ever. Otherwise, they're going to be locked into some form of hypnosis and mind control. And it doesn't mean it's one camp that's controlling the mind. It means there's an infinite number of camps for different reasons, trying to capture attention for profit or for whatever. But if you want to have authority, an inner authority, it requires a connection to the breath and to get away from the hive. And in order to really deeply, in my opinion, pray or listen to something higher than yourself, that connection to yourself, you have to slow down and feel. And that's what all these teachers you're describing, how they broke free, was to connect with themselves and their breath, and they could see through their own bullshit, which came from the hive. And it's uncomfortable to be still. And that's why I think momentum is the thing we praise and we glorify it and we reward it. And it's the ego amplification. And it's not to say it's wrong or bad, but it's to say that we've amplified one part of the pendulum of the yin and yang. And I see mostly in the West, what we've done is we've really gotten away from the ability to just slow it down and connect with our inner guide, that intuition or whatever you want to call that. And I really think it takes courage. I tell people that I love, it takes courage to slow down and to feel and to contend with the truth, which is all your programming, all of the things about the nature of reality that might exist, that might be true, your death that's coming, the fact that you don't know where the hell you're going when you die, the fact you don't know how you really got here. The truth is that we don't know, and to surrender into that is a powerful experience. And you share that with your breathing experiences, not with the languaging I'm using, but I can tell that you're creating an environment, which is somewhat of what I've tried to do, is just create space and opportunity for people to connect to their inner selves and to get away from that.
We need him more than ever, because for everybody who's sure about something, you've got somebody who's sure about the opposite.
Right.
And every authority and expert, there's another authority and expert who's completely counter to it. So you don't know who to believe. You don't know what's true. You don't know, we can't tell the difference between people who don't know shit from people who do. And so more than ever, the only solution to that is finding our own inner North Star and trusting our own. And we have to get through a lot of bullshit to get back and connecting with that, because beliefs, like we just did a process on beliefs at the seminar here today. Beliefs are so powerful, but nobody is born with beliefs. And yet history is full of people who would rather endure torture and even death rather than give up or take on a belief. And people will kill because of their beliefs. And yet no one is born with beliefs. We acquired them. And many of our deeply held beliefs, we didn't even acquire deliberately or consciously.
Right.
They were imposed on us. They were imprinted in us. And every time we're acting from some belief, and we don't even call it a belief because it just seems like obvious reality. And beliefs are, when you hold a belief, you tend to pick up any evidence that supports the belief, and you ignore and you're oblivious to any evidence that oppose to it. And if you are in the same way, if somebody throws a rock at your head, you don't have to think, you just duck. It's how you avoid physical pain. But we avoid emotional and psychological pain when our beliefs are challenged. Yeah. And so someone challenges your belief and you're just going to duck and have it go by, or you'll catch it or swat it away. And that's what we do when our beliefs are threatened. So if we're not doing this inner work, when you believe something, you probably don't even say you believe it, you know it, or you don't even know it. It's how it is. And oh my God, you need to slow down. You need to look at yourself. You need to come back into a center. And because beliefs are like a crust around our intuition, and you need to examine your beliefs. But when we form a belief, it takes on a life of its own, and it defends itself. And we defend, when someone attacks our beliefs, we react as if we are being threatened, right?
Yeah.
And so we got to do the work of sorting this out, and questioning and inquiring and observing and developing mindfulness and meditative awareness and presence, and don't be coming from a belief, but come from more of a Zen-like innocent mind and present moment reality without projecting and including and baggage in it. And that takes work. But fortunately, that's one of the beautiful benefits of breath work. Breath work burns away that stuff. It clears that stuff away. It helps you navigate it and come to see what's real, and just don't confuse what you think with what is, and question that. And breathing gives you a space to do that, because I look at breathing as a trick. It's just a trick. Because when you are breathing, you are not doing what you usually would do in that moment: judging, resisting, arguing, escaping, avoiding, whatever. And the fact that you're breathing in those moments, you're not doing what you usually would do. And now there's a space for a possibility, for a choice. And so the breath starts to create space for choice. And I like to point out that the lungs are wrapped around the heart. And as soon as you're breathing, you're doing something, you're awakening heart intelligence. And now it can inform mind intelligence. But most people, there's a split there. Their head is countering what their heart is telling them, or they have a gut feeling, but their head doesn't allow them to follow it. And I think everybody has had that experience where you just had a feeling, but you didn't follow it. And later you look back and you go, shit, I had a feeling. I knew it. You knew it because there's a brain in your gut and there's a brain in your heart. And breathing awakens heart intelligence, and it awakens body intelligence. And now you can show up fully. You're not trying to navigate life just through this neck top computer. Your heart is informing, your gut is informing, and breathing helps us to show up more fully. And when we do, I think, heart, mind, and body intelligence, when they're all functioning and united, that's intuition. That's how intuition works. All those things just line up, and it's not a mental thing. Yeah, I got it. It's a cellular thing. It's your whole being says yes or says no. It's not a mental thing. And so this thing fixes that problem of being stuck in your head. And if you're stuck in your head, you're stuck with limiting thoughts. You're stuck with a narrow perspective. You're stuck with your own programming and your conditioning and all that crap. And you don't want to go into your body because trauma is stored there. Emotions that you've suppressed are living there. And breathing is going to bring all that stuff up. So when people begin to breathe, they better be ready and willing, because the breath is going to unlock unexpressed communications, suppressed emotions, trauma that you managed to bury because you just didn't want to deal with it and you couldn't function with it. And all that stuff, the breath is going to stir it up. So you better be able to remain conscious. You better be able to let go, and you better be able to breathe. And those are the three things I coach. I think a good breathing coach is like a midwife. A person is bearing their soul to themselves in your presence. So it's a sacred kind of a relationship. And so you want to allow the person's inner healer to decide the content and the direction of a breathing session, and don't come in with your own agenda and so help people work through that stuff. When I'm coaching people, I have one thing in mind: stay awake. Don't space out. Don't travel off into the astral plane. Don't go unconscious. Don't fall asleep. Stay conscious. And the other thing is you got to keep relaxing. Every breath, every exhale, you got to let go. You got to let go. You got to let go. How can you move forward if you don't let go? And you got to be able to keep breathing. So for me, breath work is very simple. Keep the person breathing, remind them to relax, and make sure they stay awake. And then if you breathe, if you do that for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes, a person is going to heal something. They're going to have an insight. They're going to grow. They're going to shift. They'll have a release. And it's not rocket science. It's very simple. And I call that my formula for transformation. What are we coaching in genuine breath work? We are encouraging awareness. Be aware of your forehead frown. Be aware of the tension in your mind. Be aware of your thoughts. Be aware of your posture. Be aware of your breath. It's the consciousness factor. Be conscious. And you got to learn to let go, to release, to allow, to surrender, to soften. Don't be so rigid. So relaxation is the release factor, and breathing, that's the energy factor. You got to be able to generate energy to do this healing. You got to awaken or generate this energy, and that's what the breath does. So for me, breath work is very simple. Keep the person breathing, just keep the breath moving, make sure they're relaxing, and stay awake. And every single time, something amazing is going to happen. It's just, it cannot not happen. So
it's beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing. There's so much you touched on there, especially I want to go back to at some point the belief systems part, because it's so important right now than ever. But in your workshop, the one that I went to that was a longer one, and I was doing the circular breathing, in my culture, especially firefighter culture, everybody's terrified to be vulnerable and to be emotional, right? And I remember already having worked through quite a bit. I'd been floating and doing some psychedelics and some other things where I'd been shedding a lot. But in yours in particular, I remember just weeping. And there was a lot of tears of joy. I found this place of like, wow, I'm just like connected to this moment. I'm in a really cool space where this guy's allowing me to be vulnerable. And you kept reminding me to breathe by breathing really loudly. And it would bring me back to my body. And so I went on this really beautiful inner journey and shed so much emotion. But it wasn't about focusing on trauma in that. And that's one thing in this culture now, is that everything's so hyper focused on trauma, which is a part of it and it's important. And I've read books on it and all that. But a lot of it can be about feeling good too. And a lot of it can be about being blissed out and feeling your body and feeling your connection to life source energy for the first time and being in awe and wonder. Same thing with the psychedelics, as I'm sure you know. It's like, why is everything so focused on you and your little problems and your storyline and your victimhood versus like the awe and the wonder and blowing your mind and looking at the moon and seeing that the whole thing around you is living and breathing and you're not separate from it. All of that to me is healing. And some of our traumas are bullshit, our BS, our belief systems. And so a lot of the major stuff that we get at with the breath, especially people that share it in the way that you do, is to give people access to the truth. And the truth is uncomfortable and it's weird and it's uncertain. But when you're there, it's also beautiful to get comfortable with the truth and to lean into it. And that's where your true power comes from and your freedom comes from. And that's actually why most of these traditions have persecution as far as letting people connect to their body and their breath. And they want to keep you distracted. And I think a lot of the social engineering that's happening now is to keep everyone divided. You know, so now it's more important than ever to not buy into any of this crap and to walk away from it and to connect with nature, connect with yourself and your breath and your family and your community and things like that. But I think the breathing part for people, they don't realize how powerful it can be. You know, it's like, what are we going to learn how to breathe? It's like, no, you're going to connect with yourself, but you're going to allow access to all of that stuff that's really, truly there that creates human life in and of itself. So the BS stuff, I found like Robert Anton Wilson and Krishnamurti and Alan Watts and all these great folks that poke all this shit apart and help you to go, hey man, nobody has a clue what's going on, you know? Yeah. So that's okay though. I think people want to have some person or some authority figure tell them what the answers are. And to me, it's like, it's all BS, you know? And the more we can shatter that stuff, which is what you share, and I love it, that the more we're going to be free, and it's healing in and of itself.
Wow, beautiful. And BS, belief system. Duh, that's so cool. That's the first time I've made that connection. But
Yeah.
everything is a belief system. If I say Santa Claus, everybody who's listening knows exactly what I mean. That means that you have the belief in Santa Claus. But the difference is it's not charged. And you can't, beliefs are like energy, they can't be destroyed. All you can do is transfer the energy from one belief to another belief, and do that to a belief that serves you better, to a belief that brings you peace, to a
Mm-hmm.
belief that allows you to accomplish your goals. You can't eliminate beliefs because everything's a belief. And so you might as well get in charge of that process and choose your beliefs and transfer. And you can't destroy a belief. You can only transfer the energy. That's the only difference between beliefs that are charged or they're not. And so we have to just, we can't, you got to move the energy to another belief, a one that serves you better, one that's closer to the truth. And that's the best we can do. So we up level our beliefs, I believe that a heartfelt intention powered by the breath can change the fucking world.
Mm.
I'm sure of it. If I focus on my heart and I breathe and I focus on love and peace and joy, and with every breath, it's like throwing a stone out into a calm lake and that circle wave goes off. Every breath that has this heartfelt intention behind it is sending a real wave of energy out into the world, and that wave is going to go on forever. And that wave has been tagged with a certain energy. And me and my childlike mind really believes that somewhere out there, a guy is about to strike a child, and that wave I just sent out just happened to pass through him in that moment, and it gives him pause. And I think we've all had moments where we suddenly just felt good for no reason at all. And maybe that's because there's millions of Buddhist monks who face the four directions of the compass every day, and they just put out peaceful vibrations.
Hmm.
And as screwed up as the world is, it would be a lot worse if people weren't doing things like that. And so I don't think we really understand or are willing to acknowledge how powerful our thoughts are. And so, and for me, my belief, the mind gets its power from the breath. The mind is creative, and it gets its creative power from the breath. And so I have a certain responsibility. The more powerful my breath is, the more powerful my thoughts are. So if I have thoughts of violence or anger or judgment, those thoughts are getting more powerful, and I'm becoming more of a danger to the world. So I can't afford the luxury of a negative thought, because my breath is too powerful. If I think about somebody and I put out hate towards them, oh my God, I could kill them. I could give them a disease, for God's sakes. So I can't get away with that. And I have a belief that we're all connected. We're literally, it's not just a pretty spiritual idea. We're literally connected. We're all sucking off the same bubble of air on this planet. And some of the air that's in me, I don't know where you are right now, but literally some of the molecules of air, we're sucking off the same bubble of air on this planet. And some of the molecules of air that are in me were in the Buddha a couple thousand years ago. We're in Jesus, we're in Moses, we're in Caesar, all the great saints. Literally, the actual molecules of air that circulated. There's a dog that lives next door. Some of the molecules of air that were in that dog are in me. And I can't get around that. That's a fact. It's a belief, but I think it can be proven.
Yeah.
So that means we're responsible. That's a responsibility. If we're all connected, how can I hurt you without hurting myself? If we're all connected, how am I ever going to get free unless I liberate other people? Mm. And if we're all connected, none of us is free until all of us is free.
Yeah.
And who cares who comes first? And so it's for me to selfishly take care of my own liberation is the best thing I can do for every other people. Because if I can become completely free, everyone's going to be liberated in the process. Mm. And it behooves me to liberate as many other people as possible, Because if I can liberate anyone out there, I'm going to be liberated in the process because we're connected. It's not just a spiritual idea. I have to live with that as a very driving, powerful belief. And it causes you to make choices and arrange your life in certain ways. And you can't get away with certain things. If I'm connected to you, then what? Now let logic take you the next step. And I think as infants, as children, we feel everything that everybody else feels. And you can't form your own self. You can't navigate the world. You're getting pushed and pulled by all the information and energy you're getting from other people. And you learn to pull your antenna in and block out that so that you can manage yourself. And it's kind of like, when you have a little tree you planted, you got to put a fence around it so the cows don't step on it or eat it. But then once the tree is grown, it's stronger than the fence, and you still got the stupid fence around you. So at some point, the ego that we formed, and I use the word ego, it's probably not an accurate, I think some people who've studied Freud or whatever might argue, but for me, the ego is our greatest fear combined with a strategy for coping with that fear. And for me, that's the basic structure of the ego. Our greatest fear combined with a strategy for coping with that fear. And that's the basis of our ego. And that was formed early in life. And you don't even remember what your greatest fear was, but the strategy is still running. Whenever you get stressed, whenever you get pressed, whenever you get stuck, that strategy gets triggered. And so that's what breathing does. It helps us to dissolve these structures. And breath work triggers genuine transformation and not just philosophical, genuine transformation. And I use the metaphor of a caterpillar, which is like, the perfect example of transformation, turning into a butterfly. And what a real living example. But what I like to say is, if a caterpillar had a human mind, it would never become a butterfly. Because as soon as everything in that caterpillar's body started to turn to mush, and that metamorphosis and that transformation began, you'd call a doctor. Help, I'm dying. Stop it. And breath work triggers that kind of transformation. And that's why a lot of people don't go near it. Yeah. Because deep inside, they sense that they're going to have to give up some falsity, some fake self. And that's very scary, that something that you believe your whole life and suddenly you realize you've been wrong. Boy, that's hard. Very few people can manage that. And the more educated you are, the more proof you have about it, the more certain you are about it, the less able you're actually able to realize that, oops, I was wrong my whole life. Boy, that's a hard pill to swallow.
It is. Yeah. So, and it's funny.
That people avoid transformation and awakening.
Yeah, it's an obvious thing that we avoid it because it's so uncomfortable. And I've even had some incredible people on this show where they're studying the mind for 40 plus years, and they've written many books on neuroscience and on psychology, and they've really picked apart with the mind to explore the mind, but they haven't. I ask all of them about whether it be breath work or psychedelics or what kind of embodiment practices they have to explore consciousness. And a lot of them, almost all of them, have steered as far away as you could possibly imagine from those things. And then I don't criticize it because I realize they're human and they're, afraid, like you said, of losing everything, their life's work and all of their foundation, which you could call the ego or the construct. But when you do start to, I was doing it in float tanks 15 years ago. That was my first moment of seeing my BS. And going, what the hell? I thought I was those thoughts. I was identified with the thinking mind. And once you observe them, and then you start to observe the observer and all these layers, and you're like, what the fuck is all this? And I think that's so terrifying to people because it leaves you with nothing but the truth. the truth of all of the awe and the mystery again. And I feel like the gratitude piece, if you were going to orient your mind towards something right off the gate, my first prayer is to slow down, connect with the breath. Oh my God, be grateful for the fact that you're having an experience. You're in a body, you're feeling, you're connected. That first principle to me of gratitude, if you're going to orient towards anything with the breath, is like the most healing experience ever.
Oh, gratitude is the highest frequency emotion. And in the field of gratitude, illnesses, diseases, suffering cannot exist. It's like oil and water. And so generating gratitude, making a list of things you're grateful for, and just generating gratitude for no reason at all, oh my God, that's going to transform your life. You do it as a discipline. Do it as a daily thing. Mark Divine, one of my favorite guys in the world. Every day, first thing he does when he gets up in the morning, he drinks a glass of water. And while he's drinking the water, he's doing a gratitude process. Start your day with that. Oh my God, you're going to be successful. It's going to get really hard to suffer. You're going to be resilient. You're going to be more conscious. Oh, gratitude. Oh my God. I think it's highly underrated, unappreciated, just how powerful the choice to be gratitude is. Looking, deliberately looking for reasons to feel grateful and deliberately just generating gratitude, even if you don't have a reason, just do it. Oh, wow, you're right on with that, man. I love you. And this feeling part, oh God, I was just where I did a session today inside his studio. He's got a sign that says life begins on the other side of discomfort. I think that's something like that. Like if you're not feeling fear, you're not growing. If you're not dealing with discomfort, you're stuck in your comfort circle. You're not growing.
Yeah.
Nobody grows without going through a period of discomfort. Sometimes healing and growth means looking at things that are uncomfortable and doing things that are scary. There's just no way around it. You mentioned Leonard Orr. One of the beautiful things he said, confusion is a high state that leads to a new order. And the more willing we are to go through periods of temporary confusion, the faster we can grow. And then we turn that into discomfort. Discomfort is a very high state that leads to a new order. And the more willing you are to go through periods of temporary discomfort, the faster you can grow. Yeah. And then we took it all the way to temporary insanity. Temporary insanity, when everything you thought is true about yourself and life and you think you're going crazy, that's a very high state. It's on the cusp leading to a new higher order. And so the more willing we are to go through those periods of temporary insanity, that's a sign of rapid growth. We just need to be able to navigate those transition periods. And that's what the breath becomes. It becomes an anchor. And that's what a quiet mind does for us. It keeps us, you're in the wild hose demonstration. I think if anybody's ever seen why it's so important to control your energy and control your mind, just look what happens to a wild hose that nobody's going to handle on. And so that's coming back to mindfulness and coming back to the breath. That's the secret. It's a no-brainer. In my book, I have a little story of General James Cook. What a beautiful man. And when he was a 3-star general, he was in charge of biological, chemical, nuclear weapons for the Army. He had 7,500 guys under his command. He was an Army Ranger. I mean, he's the real deal. And he was in Afghanistan and Iraq with his guys. He didn't have to ride around in the Humvee in the back seat with his guys on patrol, but that's the kind of guy he was. He wanted to be with his people. And anytime somebody under his command died, he went personally to the mother, to the wife, to the father. I love this guy. And he has this beautiful story I have in my book. They were up in somewhere, cold mountain area, I'm guessing Afghanistan, calling in missile strikes, him and his Ranger team. And he got a feeling. And he looked over about 100 meters, 100 yards away, and he thought, it just looked warmer there. And not a logical anything. And it was kind of and he told us, hey, let's pack up our shit. Let's move. And they just got there all in position. They had been calling in strikes, and he just said, let's go here. So they picked up all their stuff. They went over there. Just as they set up, a missile landed exactly where he and his team were.
Mm.
He got one little piece of shrapnel in his helmet from that missile, and he kept it as a souvenir of his intuition. And how is he connected to his intuition? He practices meditation, and he practices breathing.
Mm.
Real life, undeniable proof how important this stuff is.
Yeah.
And so when it happens in that serious life and death situations in our everyday life, oh my God, it's going to make miracles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love where you're coming from, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it too. It's bringing me back on that story. Like, I've been in some weird situations where when I first got hired on the fire department, I'd have a house fire, and you rely on your training, but I had no breath awareness other than knowing how to breathe through my bottle and all that crap. But I remember coming out of my first fire and not remembering what the house even looked like because I was so tunnel vision and so ramped up. And so now with the newer guys, I try to share with them just how important this is on the most fundamental level of just nervous system management, which increases awareness, which slows you down. Yeah, and then all of a sudden you can leverage it, and it's more like a video game, and you're able to breathe with awareness. You're able to control your pack, your air pack. It's so a part of that. And then when you extrapolate and go out to life, and you're in traffic or you're with loved ones or whatever, it's like this is life itself, the breath. And so then it's important with this gratitude stuff, but I also love that you're always about curiosity and exploration, which is the opposite of judgment and sort of being stuck in fear and the only way to get there, I would imagine, is to stop caring what people think. I think that's like the real poise.
And you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
When you have this approach, you're going to be wrong. You're going to make mistakes. You thought you were following your intuition, but it wasn't. But that's going to happen anyway, even under the best circumstances, with the best planning and the rigid protocols and stuff, is still things aren't going to work out. So that willingness to make mistakes and to fail forward is like really important. And don't beat yourself up. And that's really easy to do. I can think, I just get a lump in my throat when I made a mistake and what happened to people, and I got to live with that. It's very easy to spiral, and you have to be able to breathe in, breathe out, move on, and beating yourself up and not allowing yourself to be human. Nobody's perfect. And I'd love to be, I wish I could have been perfect in some situations. And my faults, my flaws, my failures, there's no avoiding them. They're going to happen. Get used to it, and just do better next time. Be more conscious. And hey, that situation about breathing is a really cool thing. Came out of this study. It's 15 years ago, whatever, maybe longer. I think Midwestern University, whatever it was, they had some epileptic patients that they were preparing for some kind of a surgery, like a last resort surgery, when somebody has really frequent and serious seizures. They've tried everything else, and finally they go in and they do some surgery and they snip something in the brain, right? So they were doing cognitive testing before the surgery, I assume, because after the surgery, they're going to do cognitive testing and make sure they didn't snip something they shouldn't. And one of the tests was recognizing a face on a computer screen. Is it mad, sad, glad, confused, whatever? And when they were correlating the data after the study, they had a surprising observation. If the person happened to be inhaling, when that image flashed on the screen, their recognition was quicker and their recollection was longer, their retention was longer. In every case, they just happened to be inhaling and their recognition was quicker and their recollection was greater. And if they were exhaling, there was no significant change. And if they were in between breaths, there was no significant change, but in every case. So how do you translate that? When you get in a situation and you're surveying the scene, be inhaling. It adds something. If you're looking at a sunset, don't just look at it, breathe it in. If you're listening to someone, don't just listen to the words, use your breath and take in the energy behind the words. Most people have not trained this way, but you're going to get information that's going to bypass your mind, but it's going to be available to you when you need to make a quick decision. And what they found is that when teams breathe together, when they synchronize their breath, there's this energetic connection, and we don't acknowledge it. Like the simple thing, like in boot camp, where the drill sergeant goes, "I can't hear you," and everybody goes, "Yes, sir." "I still can't hear you." "Yes, sir." They are synchronizing their breathing in that moment, and it causes them to gel as a team without doing it on purpose. People who pray together out loud, and they're synchronizing their breathing by praying together. I was born Catholic, and we used to do the rosary. And the priest would go, "Hail Mary, full of God, the Lord's with thee, blessed art thou among women, blessed are thou among Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for sinners now at death, amen. Hail Mary, full," and everybody's praying together. But what's also happening is they're synchronizing their breath. And even in a football huddle, when they all decide on a team, and they go, "Ha!" For that moment, they all brought together energetically. And do that consciously, and do it for a more extended period of time. When you got a team and you have time, take a couple of minutes, lock arms, and just breathe together. And then when you stop moving off, cool things happen. You see something, and I just have an urge to look in that direction. It's pretty cool. And you sense and you feel things. And now you're co-regulating. And I think the next, there's a lot of research and understanding around the flow state, an individual flow state. The next evolution of that is group flow. How do you generate group flow? Breathing. Breathing is the way that you create group flow, group resonance, co-regulation. Nervous heart rates in train, breathing patterns in train. And people need to be doing it consciously. And if you're a team, it just feels good.
Yeah.
Take that's together when you finish something before you go somewhere. It's a way to, and in that moment, somebody's battery is high, somebody's battery is low. But when you're breathing together, everybody gets equalized. It's an energetic phenomenon. And I don't think it's being done enough. Yeah. I don't think it's being utilized in a very deliberate way. It should be part of training.
Yeah, it should.
More. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, and I'm excited for the future of these group flow states. I've read a lot of like Jamie Wheel, Stephen Kotler, those guys that are doing flow genome, and it's all breathing. And they talk about the special forces guys, which you have too, about synchronized breath in combat. It's like all the top performers are doing breath coaches. My friend Brandon here trains like Sugar Sean O'Malley, the #1 fighter of his class, and it's all breathing. And when you see him come out to the fight, he's so present, and people are like, how is he so composed? It's breath practice outside of the arena to then be embodied and lucid when he's in the arena. And so the more we can just start to build that relationship and get comfortable with the breathing, it makes you more lucid, which to me, if you were going to look at any orientation for this plane we call life, especially if you truly don't know what it is, the mystery to me is beautiful, but how lucid can I be when I'm here? And half the day I'm not. But the fact that I even know that I wasn't is a beautiful place to start. And I think with breathing practices, I've heard you say this, and I do it when I'm walking. You're aware of half of your walk or your hike or whatever, and then you're not aware of it. But who cares? The fact that you're even aware that you're not aware is pretty cool in and of itself. I'd love for you to maybe...
Every moment that you come back, you're getting a handle on your energy, you're getting a handle on your attention. And even if it's just for a breath or two, and then you forget for a while, but then you remember, you take a breath, you're back. Well, that accumulates. That has a real effect. You can't be conscious all the time. It's impossible. But the more time, it's the instructions that they give meditators, right? I try to meditate, but my mind is always wandering. Good. Every time you notice your mind wanders, bring it back to the meditation. That's what meditation is. Yeah. When a plane flies from New York to London, and it's got a flight path, it's not on that path. It's constantly going off and coming back, going off and coming. The whole journey is coming back onto the course. That's what meditation is, and that's what breathing, how we use breathing.
Yeah, I like that metaphor, actually. It's really cool. Can you share a little bit of some practical techniques that you would share with a beginner, that someone's interested in Dan Brulé's breathwork? What is it? How do I begin? What are some basic fundamentals that someone could walk away with that would be useful to start building this relationship?
Breath awareness, just tuning into your breath. You don't have to breathe in any special way. Breathing is already happening. You can play with your breath while you're applying breath awareness. Start at the tip of your nose and just plant your attention at the tip of your nose and let everything else disappear from your world. Get 100% focused on the sensations at the tip of your nose when the breath comes in and when the breath goes out, and keep your attention fixed there. And notice, look for details. Tune into subtle sensations. You might notice that the air is a little cooler coming in. It's a little warmer going out. And there's a different sensations on the inhale and the exhale. What are they? Don't think about them. Tune into them. Look and feel for details. And then bring your attention further into your nasal passages, into, say, the bridge of the nose, and sense, I call these touch points, points where you can touch upon the experience of breathing. So the first is the tip of the nose, and then deeper into the nasal passages, say up towards the bridge of the nose, and bring your attention there and sense the breath. And you don't have to breathe in any special way. You can just let the breath come and go by itself, or you can play with your breath to light up the sensations, make them easier to feel. Breathe faster, breathe whatever, turn the breath up to be able to tune into the sensations. That's okay. Tip of the nose and then further into the nasal passages. It's a meditation. You're practicing breath awareness. Then come into your skull and sinuses. Most people aren't aware of their sinuses until they're stuffed up. It's a beautiful experience to be able to sense your sinuses when they're open and clear, and feel the breath as they're, you have turbinates that are spiraling air. There's a swirling that's happening, and you might encounter the light phenomenon, the light aspect of the breath. As soon as you focus on your skull and your sinuses, experience the breath from there, sense the breath from there, and then down into your throat. Bring all your attention to your throat and sense the breath as it's coming in and out of your throat. And then loop back around to the tip of the nose, bridge of the nose, sinuses and skull and throat, and create a little wheel of breath turning and a little wheel of awareness. And see if you can't light up all four of those touch points: tip of the nose, bridge of the nose, sinuses and skull and throat. And sense the breath. You have expanded your awareness of the breath. You're experiencing the breath from these multiple touch points. You're getting more conscious and more aware of the breath. And then pick up the breath up under your collarbones. And you might play with the breath and see if you can create some suppleness, some flexibility, some light movement. So this upper area of your lungs under your collarbones, we're picking up the breath in the form of movement. And right around this time, you could start to go back to the throat and activate the yawning reflex. And then experience the different sensations of the breath. Because when you yawn, the throat opens. And if you're conscious, if you can breathe while you're yawning and really feel the major difference in what happens in your throat, when the breath is passing through a throat that's been opened by the yawning reflex. So activate the yawning reflex, and then breathe in and out your throat and feel that openness, and breathe through that openness. And then go down into your chest, around your heart area. And as soon as you start focusing on the breath in your heart area, you should have an urge to take a big breath, because the breath just literally came through a bottleneck. And now it can really open and expand, and it wants to do that. And as soon as you focus on your chest and your heart area, you should have a natural urge, or you should feel the breath itself expand, because now it can expand. It's moved through this narrow bottleneck, and now it has spaciousness, side to side, front to back, top to bottom, and sense the movement and encourage more movement and invite more expansion. And then go down to your lower ribs and see if you can play with the side to side expansion, what Belissa Vranich calls horizontal breathing. Sense the breath expanding side to side in your lower ribs and create more of that movement there. And you might even put your hands on your side of the ribs and press in and use the power of the breath to spread your ribs side to side, create that side to side expansion. And then follow the breath all the way into the upper abdomen. And now you're in touch with the movement of the diaphragm, and sense the excursion rate of the diaphragm. When you inhale, the diaphragm flattens and your belly pops out. When you exhale, the diaphragm rises up and this dome shape comes up under your rib cage, and get a sense of that movement of your diaphragm. And then get all the way down into the floor of your pelvis and sense the breathing there. So now you've got full body awareness of your breath. You're sending the breath to every cell of your body, and you're sensing the breath with your whole body. And you should be able to feel the breath in the palms of your hand, in the tips of your fingers. And you might use this meditation now that you've become aware, you practice breath awareness. Where to start? Start with breath awareness. Become more conscious, more sensitive, more aware to the movement and the feelings of the breath, the muscles you use, the channels that the breath passes through, the places where the breath is touching and going. Get intimate with this. This is meditative awareness. And another beautiful meditation, where to start? Your heartbeat. Feel, you have to get quiet and feel your heartbeat in your chest. And the more you tune into it, the louder it gets, the easier it is to feel. At first you go, oh yeah, my heartbeat, and you don't even feel it. But as you focus, it starts to light it up. You really start to be able to feel it. And once you can feel your heartbeat in your chest, see if you can sense the pulse up around your carotid arteries in your neck. You can feel the heartbeat there. And at some point, you should be able to feel your heartbeat from anywhere in your body. Go to the palms of your hands and your fingers and sense your heartbeat from there. You're developing interoception. You're using mindfulness to embody yourself, come into your body fully. So we use our breath to awaken this meditative awareness, this ability to feel our body. And that's so important because you can get cues from your body in information. You need to be connected to it. And then the next thing I do, I would run people through first the triangle breath, which is inhale, exhale, pause. And just do it on purpose. Inhale, maybe 3 or 4 seconds. Exhale, 3 or 4 seconds, and then pause. Because this is a natural breathing pattern when you're sitting at rest. We're hardwired to breathe this way. Inhale, exhale, pause. Inhale, exhale, pause. So breathe that way on purpose, and now you're aligning with your nature. And so from a triangle breath, I would go to box breathing, the go-to breathing for balancing your nervous system, getting a felt state of being on top of your energy and in control. Box breathing, inhale 4, pause 4, exhale 4, pause 4. And then I would move into circular breathing or coherent breathing. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. 5 seconds in, no pauses. So triangle, square, and then you could say connected breathing, but in between the box and the circular breathing, I put coherent breathing because there's a moment of transition. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then smooth out the turn between the inhale and the exhale and the curve between the exhale and the inhale. And now you're doing circular breathing. So I would take those steps with the beginner and practice each one and get good at each one. And you're developing breath control. You're starting to get sensitive to energy. And from there, you can start to play with a lot of other breathing exercises and techniques.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing. You actually dropped me into a nice calm state. I was pretty calm before, but that felt good. And I'm sure the listeners will, if they're willing to go through that, it's nice just to connect with that awareness. So
we went through it quick. You really want to put time aside.
mm-hmm.
And this latest, it's about 6 months, 7 months old, but cyclical sighing came from Uberman Lab at Stanford. Just take a sigh of relief and exaggerate it and make it dramatic and theatrical.
Mm-hmm.
Do that for 5 minutes. More benefits than any meditation technique, more benefits than any anxiety and stress and coping technique. Simple cyclical sighing, a physiological sigh. If you're doing the work on mindset, you got to be doing the work on physiology. And that's where the breath has its effect. You can manage your mind, but the body's still going to be, what it is. And breathing takes care of that piece. And so just a sigh of relief, everybody already knows how to do it. Just do it on purpose and add visualization. When you breathe in, imagine your favorite fragrance. Think of something beautiful. And then exaggerate the exhale. When you let the breath go, let your jaw go, let your shoulders go, let thoughts in your head go. Combine the releasing of the breath with the releasing of a muscle or a group of muscles or a joint or a collection of joints, and repeat that for 5 minutes. A simple sigh of relief. It's magic.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to breathe through your mouth once in a while. Like people get so hung up. It's like, be a little bit more free and explore it and learn for yourself. I love when you said with Swami Rama that you had the insight to let the breath teach you. And that was so powerful because it was true, because that's where it's going to come from, I bet. But then he sort of disowned it and you left and went your way. But now you also teach. You're doing a workshop right now where you're still willing to share with people, but you're directing them back to themselves and to the freedom to explore the breath and to build a relationship with it. It's not about you being the guy with all the answers. And so I just want people to be more free in their bodies and in their breath and in their minds. I think you do too.
And there were certain fundamentals that's universal. You might as well drill on those basic fundamentals. And then when you get fundamentals under your belt, you can start putting them together in unique ways. Even the greatest musicians practice the scales before they perform. Yeah. So you drill on the fundamentals. Inhale, exhale, pauses, rhythm. Rhythm is the universal principle. Breathing in a certain rhythm. Yin and yang, active and passive. Circles and cycles. These are universal principles. And you're very safe applying them to the breathing. You're going to be assured that you're not doing anything artificial. The other thing is what I call the energy to effort ratio. Don't use any muscles you don't need to. Neck muscles are not breathing muscles. Shoulder muscles are not breathing muscles. So I have people squeeze the back of their neck, squeeze down the name of these muscles on your shoulder, and then breathe really deep and really hard and really fast, and make sure nothing happens in those muscles. Because when you get under stress and you start using accessory muscles, everything gets jammed up. You need efficiency and economy and coordination. So there are fundamentals, and training in proper breathing, structural foundations and, chemical, we have to honor chemistry, no doubt about it. And those universal principles. And you don't need a lot of expert guidance because we have already enough that we can the basics we can play with. And the greatest musicians always come back to the basics. They play the scales. And so, same thing with breathing. You don't need a lot of complicated breathing exercises and techniques. The simple stuff really works.
Beautiful. Well, I've had you for a while. Do you mind recommending what
Oh,
favorite
yeah.
book?
Oh, my God. You
I know
must.
I don't even know what time it is, but I just feel like I've captured you for a bit here, which is nice. But I want to let you
No,
go. But
I'm in the teaching mode. I just got off teaching before we started, and I got no off button. So forgive me for
I love it.
without stopping. Yeah,
Do you have a
appreciate it.
favorite recommendation for an intro book besides yours? I love Just Breathe. That was one of my favorite. I always recommend to people when they're starting out. And Breath is pretty good, James
Hmm.
Nestor. But
I have a collection of them, but I would go to the classics: Science of Breath, Yogi Rama Sharaka; Path of Fire and Light, Swami Rama. Um, yeah, there's so many
cool.
beautiful. The original Rebirthing book. Um, and James Nestor's book's got a lot of cool information in there. Patrick McEwen's book is great. Stan Groff, Leonard Orr, phew, Jim Morningstar. Um, yeah, I have so many equal,
Mm,
all in the
yeah.
same level kind of books to turn to. But go to the classics, the
Yeah.
original. Go back to the original classics of Taoist, Buddhist, yogic breathing, Sufi
Hmm.
breathing practices. Everything's a modern evolution of that, or a spontaneous rediscovery of it. And when you turn to the classics, sometimes the language is archaic, and sometimes the techniques are they're connected to beliefs that you might not want to adopt, but you peel that stuff away and grasp the actual practices, right? Sufis, oh man, Sufi techniques are fantastic. Yeah.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah, I love this book called Pranayama. It's an old Swami, I forget his name, but that's a fantastic deep dive, and I could reread it over and over. So
Yeah.
detailed, but that's more for later once you get over the introduction stuff, which is fun. But anyway, I ask everyone if you were going to die today and this was your last thing you could say to the world, what would you want to share with everybody?
Um, every breath is a blessing. Just get it. Every breath is a blessing. It's a miracle that we're even alive, that we can feel anything, even pain. The fact that you can feel pain is a freaking miracle. Be grateful for every breath because it's a blessing, and find a way to make every breath a prayer. Every breath a prayer, every breath a blessing. If you can live with that, it's going to be hard to suffer. You'll be able to navigate in the midst of anything, I think.
Beautiful. I love it so much, and I do appreciate your time. I'll make sure to send everybody to your website and all of your links and workshops coming up.
Thank you. Appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yay.
Thank you for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it and subscribe to the show and rate the show. That helps people to discover it. And enjoy the next episode.